Hello and a very warm welcome to Cultural Communication Confidence with me, Victoria Reynoldson. And welcome to this episode where we'll be talking about selling yourself. Now, this came up as a topic because I was asked a question by somebody. They talked about the fact that they've joined a new organization and they feel like that the culture there is very much about sharing on a frequent basis what's going well, how you're delivering, what is it that you're doing to perform and add value. Now, this was something for her that was not comfortable. It wasn't the culture of the previous organization she worked for, and it wasn't for her personally something that she felt very comfortable about. So I thought this is a topic that I suspect other people feel too. This sense of selling yourself, how does it make you feel? Maybe you do feel as like she did. It's a slightly negative thing. Maybe you feel that it's a little bit like self-promotion and a bit icky as a result. Culturally, it just might not sit comfortably with you. Perhaps your behavioral preference driven by your culture is to be much more modest and not to be operating in a space where you are sharing your personal wins. So I want to talk about this and I want to do a deep dive into how you can do this because I think it is a critical part of being successful in some organizations globally. It also can be particularly important in times of rapid change, as I know some of you have told me that you're experiencing, whether that is going through restructures, layoffs, redundancies. If you're going through that kind of change, it is even more critical that you know how to sell yourself. But how do we do this? Well, we're going to jump into that in a minute. But before we do, I want to let you know that I have a special free resource just for you to go with this podcast episode. This is a resource that you can access to help you with your global leadership skills. It's going to help you by delivering you a short, sharp video training, one a day to your inbox that you can access at any time. Now, if you would like to get hold of that free resource to go with this episode, then just head over to www.culturecuppa.com/leader. And I'll put that link in the show notes. So once you've got that resource, let's get into how we do the selling ourselves part. Well, the first thing that I want to present to you is that it's not about selling. I think that's the word that people often get hung up on. It sounds like that you're pushing, you're maybe even boasting or being aggressive. But perhaps if you want to reframe it in your mind, then I would really consider it as positioning yourself, understanding what your position is within the organization and helping the organization to understand your position too. And that goes way deeper than your current job title, because this is absolutely connected to how you project yourself, how you see yourself as a leader, and how you influence others to see you as a leader too. And that might be very critical to you if that is your aspiration, or if you're at that leadership level already, as I know some of you are, then about reaching the next level, making sure that you're positioning yourself in a way that people really understand how you add value above and beyond your current job role today. So this is why it's important. But let's get into the practicalities now. How do we actually think about this in a way that is meaningful, but also gives you some steps to follow? So it starts with step one around knowing yourself. We can't position ourselves unless we really truly understand who we are and how we add value today. So that is about going back to knowing your strengths, knowing your talents, understanding what it is that you do and people value you for. Sometimes you might hear people talking about it as a USP, a term for marketing, which stands for, it's an acronym, unique selling point. So it even has the word selling inside it. But a USP effectively means that you are deeper than your job title. It means that you are that unique combination of your skills, qualifications, expertise, and experience. You're not like anybody else who is your peer or doing the same job as you. So you need to know what those magic ingredients are, and you need to be able to express it and communicate it so that not just for an interview, if you were going through an interview process, but because also you want to be able to share it with others internally as well. So it starts here. Know your value. The second thing is framing your value. Now, that's an interesting build on the first point, because framing your value means knowing how to express it in the language of business. Now, this is particularly important and pertinent to those of you who maybe are coming from more technical functions and more technical areas, as I sometimes help people with. That means that your job title, your area may not be obvious to the rest of the business. They may not quite understand what it is that you do. So if you can explain that simply and clearly in everyday words, that helps them understand what the impact and benefit you're bringing to the organization and how that also helps people externally. So whether those are clients or customers that you're serving, or maybe those are investors and partners. It doesn't matter if you have direct contact with those external people or not. You need to be able to demonstrate how you add value to those people as well. That is important, I think, in any organization. And if you can frame your USP, your experience, in a way to the top parts of the business, to the senior leadership team, so they really understand how you add value, that's where the magic happens. So that's the second step, making sure that you frame your value. You put it in terms that others understand. The third step is about knowing your people or key people. These are the people who need to understand who you are and what you do and are critical for unlocking your next steps in your career. That's important if you're looking to progress internally. So those could be key decision makers on talent progression. They could be sitting in HR function, but they also could be senior leaders in your own department or function. They could be other departmental heads who perhaps you have less contact with day to day. But if you can identify who those critical people are, you can start to think about how do you become more visible with those people? How is it that you can share your work more widely so they see the impact that you're bringing? And that's where we have to start getting into the strategies of how we do that. But it does start with knowing the key people that you're trying to talk to, the people who need to see you and you need to become more visible with. Once you know those people, that's when you can start sharing your wins and progress. Now, this is the part I know some of you might start to get uncomfortable. Oh, I don't want to talk about myself in this way. I don't want to talk about the wins, you might be thinking. And yet, I do know this is the most effective way to position yourself well within the organization. So, I want to give you a couple of thoughts on this to help you with how to do it. The first thought that I'm going to share with you is that actually, if it's about you feeling uncomfortable about maybe boasting about your own individual wins, think about it as the team wins. Can you share in the we form what you are doing as a team and how you are part of that and enabling that specifically? So that is one way that can make that sharing of the wins more comfortable to you. The other way to think about it is, instead of it being just about the positive elements that are going well within what you're doing, it could also be sharing key learnings, both the positive and maybe some of the more challenging areas that you're learning from and adjusting the strategy on. If you think about it in that second way, actually, what is very helpful to the organization and to those key people, those senior leaders, is to understand that you have a really good view of what is working and what's not. And you are committed to bring that learning to others within the team so that they can learn from that too. So don't be shy on this. Really make it your mission to share your wins. You can do that in a regular, frequent way if there is an opportunity for you to do that, a forum that's already set up to do that. Or you could just do that informally, dropping in a message or an email to a key person to let them know about something that's been going on spontaneously and in an ad hoc way. So that is the next part about sharing your wins. The fifth area is about being a whole business leader. It doesn't matter where you sit within the organization, whether you are maybe very junior in your career and listening to this, or whether you are incredibly senior already and have progressed and had experience behind you. I think it is really important for everybody to be thinking about the true whole organizational view. So, looking outside of your own department and realm and understanding what's going on in the wider world. What is happening out in industry or in parallel industries and sectors that can help with thinking internally within the organization? What conferences or are you going to, or perhaps even events and even newsletters that you're following where people are sharing insights and information that could be very beneficial to the wider organization? I want you to think about yourself as a whole business leader or a whole organizational leader, even if you are very specifically in one area. If you start to think about yourself in this way, that means that you will be on the lookout for these insights, data, pieces of information, which are really going to help with the thinking internally, helping the organization to be ready for the future and to think more broadly and strategically about what's going on. The important part of this, of course, though, is not to keep that information to yourself. You want to be able to then share it with the rest of the organization, with the rest of the teams. So I really encourage you, whether that is in a regular, for example, weekly email with gathering of some insights that you found, or perhaps it's less frequent, monthly, or whether you just do, again, this on a more spontaneous ad hoc basis. I think this is a very powerful way to demonstrate more broadly across your departments or even across the organization, depending on the size, that you are bringing extra value. You are bringing a different strategic organizational view and more future in, outside in. The final area, the final piece of the puzzle for me around selling yourself is projecting your presence. Now, I've touched on this a few times across the podcast episodes, but really specifically in this context, I want you to think about what you want your impression, your reputation to be when people think of you. You could express that as one sentence, or maybe as a few words that describe the words you want to be seen as, perceived as. But if you can get it really short and sharp, maybe a sentence or 3 words that really describe how you want to show up and how you want to project yourself, as a leader, then you can have that top of mind and that remind yourself as you go into your meetings. And it doesn't matter, by the way, whether we're talking about everyday meetings with your team or whether you're talking about meetings with the senior leadership team or the board. I want you to show up consistently in that same way. And if you put your intentionality behind it, you will start to feel that impact. People will start playing back to you. That is how they're seeing you because you've made that active choice. You've made a very intentional choice in how you project yourself. So there we have it. The key areas to sell yourself. As a reminder, what we want to do is position yourself. And I'm going to give you a couple of questions in a minute around just reflecting on today's episode and how you can fully activate and implement this. But before I do, I just want to remind you that I have this great resource for you, completely free, which accompanies this podcast episode, all around the other key global leadership skills you need to position yourself well for the future, to be able to demonstrate your impact and to up your game as you progress in your career. If you want to access these short, sharp training videos, one a day in your inbox, completely free of charge, then head over to www.culturecuppa.com/leader. But coming back to the wrap up now, so the key areas we've talked about today is know your value. Frame your value in the words and language of the business so they clearly understand what you do. Know and identify your key people who need to see more of what you do. Share your wins and learnings. Make it tangible so people can understand what it is that you do to add value. Be a true whole business leader or organizational leader. Bring outside information and insights in and help the organization to think about the future. And then finally, project your presence, a really key part of showing up as a leader. So the questions I have to ask you today is, how are you selling yourself? What are the active steps you're going to take at the end of this episode and put into play? Choose one thing, and I'd love to know what that is. You can DM me over on LinkedIn on my personal profile, and I'd love to know what is the one action you're going to take this week to start selling yourself, to position yourself in your organization, demonstrating your value, demonstrating the amazing things that you do to bring impact. Thank you so much for joining me for today's episode. It's been an absolute pleasure to be back, you listening to me, and thank you so much for listening. As always, I always do appreciate everybody who tells me how much they get from these episodes, the value that it brings to you. I'm really excited to bring you more episodes soon, but in the meantime, see you next time.